My name is Ethel, and at 67 years old, I thought I knew heartbreak. But nothing prepared me for standing outside my daughter Catherine's wedding venue, staring at my own photograph with "No entry" written across it. After all the sacrifices, all the love I'd poured into raising her alone since she was 5, there I was, dressed in my expensive new outfit, clutching my purse, completely devastated. The security guards were already approaching to escort me away. If you're watching from somewhere that knows what family heartbreak feels like, hit like and subscribe, as I share what happened 3 hours later when everything changed in ways I never could have imagined. I never expected to be the mother who gets banned from her only child's wedding. Catherine had been my whole world since her father Thomas died suddenly of a heart attack when she was just 5 years old. Those early years were so difficult. I was a 35-year-old elementary school teacher, suddenly facing life as a single mother with a heartbroken little girl. I sacrificed everything for Catherine. I worked my regular teaching job during the day and tutored students in the evenings and on weekends to make ends meet, while other teachers took summer vacations. I taught summer school every year. There were no fancy trips for us, no new cars, no luxuries. Every extra penny went toward giving Catherine the best life I could provide: dance lessons, summer camps, SAT prep courses, and eventually a good portion of her college tuition. Catherine was such a sweet child, affectionate, bright, and curious about everything. She would sit at the kitchen table grading papers alongside me, using a red crayon to put little stars on pretend homework she'd created. We had our bedtime rituals, stories, prayers, and always an extra tight hug from Daddy in heaven. Those memories still bring tears to my eyes. The teenage years brought changes as they do for most families. Catherine became more independent, testing boundaries the way adolescents should. I remember our first major argument when she was 16. She had snuck out to attend a party where I later learned alcohol was served. I was frantic when I found her bed empty at midnight. When she finally returned at 2 a.m., I was equal parts relieved and furious. "You don't understand what it's like to be a normal teenager," she had shouted. "You're suffocating me." Her words stung, but I recognized them as part of growing up. I tried to find the balance between protecting her and letting her spread her wings. College created some distance between us, which probably did us both good. Catherine attended State University about 3 hours away. Our relationship settled into a comfortable rhythm of weekend visits, daily phone calls that gradually became weekly and longer stays during breaks. I was proud of how she was maturing, finding her way. It was during her senior year that she met Bradley, her future husband. When she first brought him home for Thanksgiving, I was immediately impressed. He was polite, well-educated, and seemed genuinely fond of Catherine. He asked thoughtful questions about my teaching career, and even helped with the dishes without being asked. I thought, this young man was raised well. The problems began when I met Bradley's family a few months later. They lived in a sprawling mansion in the wealthiest suburb of the city. Bradley's father owned a successful chain of luxury car dealerships, and his mother came from old money. During that first dinner at their home, I felt completely out of place. While they were perfectly polite, there was an unmistakable air of judgment about my modest background and career. "A teacher, how rewarding," Bradley's mother had said, in a tone that made it clear she thought it was anything but. As the relationship progressed, I noticed subtle changes in Catherine. She became increasingly concerned with appearances and status. The daughter who once proudly wore thrift store finds was now obsessed with designer labels. She began making comments about my home, my car, even my hairstyle, always framed as helpful suggestions, but carrying an undercurrent of embarrassment about me. When they announced their engagement after dating for 2 years, I was genuinely happy for them despite my reservations. I called Catherine immediately after seeing her announcement on social media. "Oh, Mum, it's going to be the most amazing wedding," she gushed. Bradley's parents know all the best people. They've already suggested the perfect venue. That's wonderful, sweetheart, I said. I've been putting a little aside each month. It's not a fortune, but I want to contribute to your special day. There was an uncomfortable pause. That's really not necessary, Mum. Bradley's parents are taking care of everything. It's their gift to us. That was just the beginning of my gradual exclusion from one of the most important events in my daughter's life. The wedding planning process made it increasingly clear that I was an afterthought in my daughter's big day. Every time I offered to help, Catherine had a ready excuse. The wedding planner has it covered, Mum. Bradley's mum is handling the flowers. We've already decided on the menu. I tried to hide my hurt feelings. This was her day after all. But as months passed and the wedding drew closer, the distance between us grew wider. One particularly painful memory was the dinner at Bradley's parents' mansion about 6 months before the wedding. His mother, Linda, had organized it to discuss wedding details, and I was surprised to be invited at all. I arrived promptly at 7 wearing my nicest outfit, a blue dress I'd bought on clearance at Macy's and saved for special occasions. Their home was intimidating with its marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and original artwork on every wall. Bradley's mother greeted me with air kisses, her diamond bracelet catching the light as she gestured toward the dining room. "We're so glad you could join us, Ethel," she said, her tone suggesting I should be grateful for the invitation. Throughout dinner, wedding plans were discussed as if I wasn't there. The 5-course meal was served by staff as Bradley's parents debated venue options, floral arrangements, and guest lists. When I finally worked up the courage to offer a suggestion about including some of Catherine's favorite childhood songs in the reception playlist, the table fell awkwardly silent. "We've actually hired a string quartet for the reception," Bradley's mother said dismissively. "Very elegant." Catherine didn't meet my eyes. Later that evening, I mentioned a funny story from Catherine's childhood, how she had once performed a dance recital in our living room, wearing a homemade tutu. Instead of joining in with her own memories, Catherine quickly changed the subject. Her cheeks flushed with what I recognized as embarrassment. The dress shopping incident was perhaps the clearest sign of how far we had drifted apart. I had always dreamed of helping my daughter choose her wedding dress. When Catherine mentioned she had appointments at several bridal boutiques, I immediately rearranged my teaching schedule to be available. "Actually, Mum," she said hesitantly over the phone, "I think it would be better if I just went with Madison and Jenna." Madison and Jenna were her college friends, both from wealthy families like Bradley's. "Oh," I said, trying to keep the hurt from my voice. "I just thought, well, I always hoped I'd be there to help you choose your dress." "I know, but there will be other things you can help with," she replied, though no other opportunities ever materialized. As the wedding date approached, I heard less and less from Catherine. My calls went to voicemail. My texts received brief replies hours later, if at all. I learned about wedding details through social media posts where Catherine tagged friends and Bradley's family members. The final blow came when Catherine called to discuss the seating arrangement. I had been seeing Howard, a kind widower I'd met through my church, for about 6 months. Nothing serious yet, but he had become a good friend and support system. "I was hoping to bring Howard as my +1, I said. "You'd really like him, Catherine." Her response was immediate and firm. "That won't work with our seating arrangements, Mum. Besides, no one knows him." "But Bradley's cousin is bringing a date she's only known for 2 weeks," I pointed out immediately, regretting my words. "That's different," Catherine snapped. "Look, we've already finalized everything. You'll be seated with my old high school teachers." It was becoming painfully clear that in the world Catherine was entering, I was an inconvenient reminder of her less polished past. The argument that became our breaking point happened exactly 2 weeks before the wedding. I had called Catherine to ask about the rehearsal dinner details, which no one had bothered to share with me. The rehearsal dinner is at Le Chateau, she said, naming an extremely expensive French restaurant. 7 o'clock business formal attire. Business formal, I repeated. I'm not sure I have anything appropriate. I could almost hear her eyes rolling. Mum, just wear something nice. Something elegant. Something about her tone, the implication that I wouldn't know what nice meant without her guidance, broke something inside me. Catherine, I said quietly. I feel like I've been pushed aside throughout this entire wedding process. I'm your mother, but I've been treated like a distant acquaintance. Don't start this again, she sighed. The wedding is stressful enough without you making it about yourself. Making it about myself, I've been nothing but supportive. I haven't complained once about being excluded from every decision, about being made to feel like I'm not good enough for your new life. Maybe that's because you're not, she shouted, then immediately fell silent. The words hung between us like a physical presence. What did you say? I whispered. I didn't mean it like that, she backpedaled. But Mum, you have to understand. Bradley's family moves in certain circles. They have expectations, and sometimes you can be so ordinary. Tears filled my eyes as she continued. You don't fit in with them, Mum. You never will. And honestly, I've worked so hard to be accepted by them. Do you know what Bradley's mother said when we got engaged? She said she was worried about what kind of wife I'd make because of how I was raised. How you were raised, I repeated incredulously. I raised you to be kind, to work hard, to treat people with respect. You raised me to settle for less, Catherine interrupted. To believe that a small house and a teacher's salary and shopping at discount stores was all I could ever expect from life. You held me back, Mum. You never pushed me to want more. Each word felt like a physical blow. I thought of the nights I'd stayed up grading papers after she went to bed, the summer vacations we never took, so I could put money aside for her college fund, the times I'd gone without new clothes, so she could have dance lessons, or science camp, or SAT prep courses. I gave you everything I had, I said, my voice breaking. Everything. Well, it wasn't enough, she replied coldly. Look, if you want to come to this wedding, you need to behave appropriately. No embarrassing stories, no trying to connect with Bradley's family or his friends with your teacher tales. And for God's sake, buy something suitable to wear. I was too stunned to respond. I have to go, she said into my silence. The wedding planner is calling. Just try to fit in. Okay. After we hung up, I sat in my kitchen, the same kitchen where Catherine had once played with her crayons beside me, and sobbed until I had no tears left. Despite the hurt, I was determined to attend the wedding. She was still my daughter, my only child. I withdrew money from my modest retirement account to buy an elegant dress and matching jacket from Nordstrom, navy blue with delicate beading that the saleswoman assured me was appropriate for a mother of the bride. I spent more than I ever had on a haircut and style, even splurged on professional makeup for the day. The week before the wedding passed in a blur of anxiety. I barely slept, rehearsing in my mind how I would behave, dignified, pleasant, keeping conversation light and impersonal. I practiced a serene smile in the mirror, determined not to show how deeply Catherine's words had wounded me. On the morning of the wedding, I rose early, my stomach in knots. As I prepared, I kept telling myself that perhaps today would mend things between us. Surely seeing me make this effort would remind Catherine of our bond. Blood is thicker than water, after all. I drove to the exclusive country estate that served as the venue, my hands trembling slightly on the steering wheel. The GPS guided me down a long, tree-lined drive to a magnificent property with manicured gardens and a grand historic mansion. Luxury cars filled the parking area, and guests in designer attire were already making their way toward the entrance. Taking a deep breath, I smoothed my new dress, checked my makeup one last time in the rearview mirror, and walked toward the beginning of what I hoped would be a new chapter in my relationship with my daughter. I had no idea how painful that chapter would be. The wedding venue was even more impressive up close. An elegant 19th century estate with perfectly manicured gardens and a view overlooking the city. Guests in expensive attire chatted in groups as they approached the main entrance, where staff in formal uniforms directed them. I felt nervous but presentable in my new outfit, which had cost more than a month's mortgage payment. As I approached the entrance, I noticed something unusual. There was a large, ornate frame on an easel next to the main door where guests were checking in. People were looking at it and then glancing around uncomfortably. My pace slowed as I got closer, a strange feeling forming in the pit of my stomach. When I was about 10 feet away, I could finally see what was in the frame. It was a photograph of me, not a flattering one, but a candid shot from Christmas 2 years ago, when I was caught mid-sentence, looking older and heavier than I liked to think of myself. Across the bottom of the photograph, in elegant calligraphy that matched the wedding invitations, were the words, "No entry." At first I thought it must be some kind of terrible joke, but as I stood there, frozen, 2 security guards in suits approached me. "Ma'am," one said quietly, "I'm going to have to ask you to leave the premises." "There must be some mistake," I said, my voice barely audible. "I'm Catherine's mother." The guard looked uncomfortable. "Yes, ma'am. We were given specific instructions regarding you. The bride has requested that you not attend the ceremony or reception." People were staring now. I recognized some of Catherine's friends from college. Bradley's relatives I'd met at the engagement party, even a couple of my own relatives who had apparently made the cut. "Could I just speak to Catherine?" I asked, fumbling for my phone. "There's been a misunderstanding." With shaking hands, I tried calling her number, only to discover she had blocked me. Text messages wouldn't go through either. "Ma'am," the second guard said more firmly, "we need you to return to your vehicle now." The humiliation was overwhelming. Dozens of eyes watched as I stood there, the mother of the bride, being treated like an unwanted intruder. My carefully applied makeup couldn't hide the shock and hurt on my face. One of Bradley's aunts, a woman I'd met briefly at the engagement dinner, hurried past, avoiding eye contact. My own cousin Janet approached her, expression pained. "Ethel," she whispered, "I had no idea. This is horrible. Do you want me to come with you?" "No." I managed to say, my pride somehow still intact. "Enjoy the wedding. Please don't make a scene on my account." I turned and walked back to my car, my legs somehow carrying me despite feeling like they might collapse at any moment. As I fumbled with my keys, I noticed a young parking attendant watching me with concern. "Are you okay, Mom?" he asked gently. The simple kindness broke what remained of my composure. I shook my head, unable to speak through the tears. He offered me a clean handkerchief and a bottle of water from a cooler near his station. "Whatever happened in there," he said, "it doesn't reflect on you. I see a lot of fancy events here. The nicest clothes don't always cover the meanest hearts." I thanked him through my tears and finally managed to get into my car. As I drove away from the venue, I caught a glimpse of the magnificent scene in my rearview mirror. White chairs set up on the lawn, flowers everywhere, a string quartet setting up under a gazebo. Everything perfect except for the mother-shaped hole in the proceedings. The drive home passed in a blur. I kept replaying the sight of my photo with that terrible caption, wondering how Catherine could have done something so deliberately cruel. This wasn't just excluding me, it was publicly shaming me, making me a spectacle for all their guests to see and whisper about. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I felt hollow, as if something essential had been scooped out of me. The house I'd raised Catherine in, the home I'd worked so hard to provide, suddenly felt like a museum of lost hopes. I walked through my empty house straight to the backyard garden. This small patch of earth had been my sanctuary for decades, the place where Catherine had once helped me plant sunflower seeds, and where she'd held tea parties with her dolls under the shade of the maple tree. Now I sat heavily on the old wooden bench, too numb even to cry anymore. The afternoon sun filtered through the leaves, creating shifting patterns on the grass. A cardinal, Catherine's favourite bird as a child, landed on the bird feeder, its bright red plumage, a stark contrast to the greyness I felt inside. Memory after memory flooded back. Catherine at 6, proudly showing me a gap where her first tooth had fallen out. Catherine at 10, winning the school science fair with her project on butterfly metamorphosis. Catherine at 16, before our relationship became strained, helping me plant the rose bushes that still bloomed along the fence. I had always believed that the bond between mother and daughter was unbreakable. Even through our difficult patches, I never imagined we could reach this point of complete rupture. What had I done so wrong? Had I been too protective after Thomas died? Had my focus on providing stability translated into stifling her ambitions? My sister Lisa called while I was still sitting in the garden. She had been invited to the wedding but declined when she learned I was being excluded. "Ethel, are you okay? Please tell me you didn't try to go to that wedding." I couldn't find the words to describe the humiliation I had experienced. "Oh, Ethel." Lisa sighed when I finally managed to explain about the photograph. "That's beyond cruel. It's unforgivable." "I don't know what to do," I whispered. "I've lost her, Lisa. I've lost my only child." There was a pause before Lisa spoke again, her voice gentle but firm. "I love you, sis, and I'm going to say something hard because I love you. This relationship has been broken for a long time, and not all of it is Catherine's fault." I bristled. "Are you saying I deserved what happened today?" "Absolutely not," Lisa said firmly. "What Catherine did was inexcusable. But if you want any chance of healing this rift someday, you need to look at the patterns that got you here." "What patterns?" I asked defensively. "After Thomas died, you poured everything into Catherine. Your whole identity became Catherine's mum. You controlled what she wore, who she spent time with, how she spent every minute of her day. You were so afraid of losing her too that you held on too tight." Her words stung because they contained truth I had never fully acknowledged. "And now," Lisa continued, "Catherine is doing to you exactly what you did to her, controlling the narrative, deciding who's worthy of being in her life, cutting off anyone who doesn't fit her vision." The parallel hit me like a physical blow. Catherine's behavior, however cruel, was a reflection of patterns she had learned from me. The way she was allowing Bradley's family to isolate her mirrored how I had sometimes isolated her in my fear of losing her after her father died. "I need to write to her," I said suddenly. "Not to demand anything, but to take responsibility for my part in this." "That's brave," Lisa said. "Just be honest. No guilt trips, no defensiveness." I went inside and found a piece of stationery, the good kind I saved for important notes. With trembling hands, I began to write, crossing out lines, starting over, determined to get the tone right. This wasn't about making Catherine feel bad or defending myself. It was about acknowledging truths that had long gone unspoken between us. "Dear Catherine Chow," I wrote. "Today was painful in ways I can't fully express, but I'm not writing to make you feel guilty. I'm writing because I've realized something important. The way you've excluded me from your life reflects patterns I created when you were growing up, after your father died. My fear of losing you made me controlling. I thought I was protecting you, but I was really protecting myself. I see now how suffocating that must have felt. The words flowed more easily as I continued acknowledging specific moments when I had put my needs above hers, when I had made decisions out of fear rather than love, when I had failed to see her as a separate person with her own path to follow. I had just signed the letter when my doorbell rang. The doorbell's chime echoed through the quiet house, startling me from my reflections. It was exactly 3 hours since I'd been turned away from the wedding. I wasn't expecting anyone. My few close friends didn't even know what had happened today. Wiping my eyes, I hesitated before opening the door. I was in no state for unexpected visitors. When I finally pulled the door open, I was shocked to see Bradley standing on my porch, still dressed in his wedding tuxedo, but with the tie loosened and a troubled expression on his face. "Bradley," I said in disbelief, "what are you doing here?" "The wedding. Mrs. Morgan." He interrupted, his voice strained. "May I please come in? I need to talk to you." Still stunned, I stepped aside to let him enter. We sat awkwardly in my living room, the contrast between his formal attire and my modest surroundings stark. "I didn't know," he blurted out after a moment of uncomfortable silence. "About the photograph, the security guards, any of it. I swear to you, I had no idea until after you'd already been turned away." I studied his face, seeing genuine distress there. "Catherine didn't tell you." Bradley ran a hand through his carefully styled hair, messing it up in a way that suddenly made him look younger, more vulnerable. "No. It was my mother's idea, apparently. She and Catherine have been close during the wedding planning. Too close." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "One of your relatives told me what happened. Your cousin Janet, I think. She was furious, said she was leaving in protest. That's when I found out. I confronted Catherine immediately." "In the middle of your wedding day?" I asked, surprised that he would cause such a scene. "It couldn't wait," he said firmly. "What was done to you was cruel and completely unacceptable. Catherine and I had our first major fight as husband and wife before we even made it to the reception. The thought of their perfect day being disrupted gave me a petty moment of satisfaction, which I immediately felt ashamed of. My mother has been influencing Catherine for months," Bradley continued, "filling her head with ideas about status and appearances, about making a clean break from her past to fully embrace her future. I thought Catherine was just going along with it to keep the peace until the wedding was over." He looked directly at me, his expression pained. "I should have intervened sooner. I saw how they were excluding you. But I told myself it wasn't my place to get involved in mother-daughter issues. That was cowardly of me." I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to blame him for not standing up for me earlier, but another part recognized the impossible position he'd been in. "After our argument, Catherine broke down," Bradley continued. "She admitted that my mother had been telling her that you would embarrass us at the wedding, that you would make it obvious, that Catherine came from a different world than ours." I flinched at the words, even though they weren't Bradley's. "But here's the thing, Mrs. Morgan. I fell in love with Catherine because she was different from the women in my social circle. She was genuine, caring, down to earth, all the qualities she got from you." His voice cracked slightly. "And I've watched those qualities getting buried under this facade my mother has encouraged her to build." Bradley pulled out his phone. "Catherine wants to talk to you. She's too ashamed to come here herself, but she needs to speak with you. Will you talk to her?" My heart raced. Part of me wanted to refuse to make Catherine feel the rejection she had inflicted on me. But the wiser part knew that perpetuating the cycle of hurt would solve nothing. I nodded, and Bradley dialed, putting the phone on speaker. "Bradley." Catherine's voice came through sounding small and congested from crying. "Is she there? Will she talk to me?" "I'm here, Catherine." I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. There was a pause, then a sob. Mum, I'm so sorry. I don't even know how to begin to apologize for what I did. The rawness in her voice broke through some of my defenses. Why, Catherine, I need to understand how you could do something so deliberately hurtful. I thought I was choosing the life I wanted, she said through tears. Linda, Bradley's mother, she made me feel like I could finally belong in their world, but only if I cut ties with where I came from. She said having you at the wedding would remind everyone of my background. And you were ashamed of your background, of me? I asked, the pain fresh again. I thought I was, Catherine admitted. But when Bradley confronted me after you were turned away, when I saw how disgusted he was by what I'd done, something broke open in me, Mum. I realized I've been living in fear. Fear of not being good enough for Bradley's family, fear of being judged, fear of losing this new identity I thought I wanted. Bradley touched my arm gently. I told Catherine that if this is the kind of person she wants to be, someone who would humiliate her own mother to impress my family, then perhaps we made a mistake getting married. I looked at him in shock. Bradley, it's your wedding day. Some things are more important than a wedding, he said simply. The kind of marriage we build, the kind of people we choose to be, those things matter more than any ceremony. Catherine's voice came through again. Mum, can I come see you? Right now, I need to see you. I thought of the letter I'd just written, acknowledging my own role in our broken relationship. Yes, I said finally. I think we both have things that need to be said. 40 minutes later, another knock came at my door. I opened it to find Catherine standing there still in her wedding dress, a magnificent creation of lace and silk that must have cost more than my car. Her professionally applied makeup was streaked with tears, her carefully styled hair coming loose. For a moment, we just stared at each other. The weight of years of misunderstandings and hurt feelings hanging between us. Then Catherine lunged forward and threw her arms around me, sobbing against my shoulder, like she used to do as a little girl after a nightmare. I'm so sorry, Mum, she cried. I'm so sorry. I held her tightly, my own tears flowing freely. Come inside, sweetheart. Bradley had tactfully gone to wait in the car, giving us privacy for this conversation. Catherine and I sat on the sofa, where we had spent countless evenings watching movies together when she was growing up. I don't even know where to begin, Catherine said, wiping futilely at her tears with the back of her hand. I handed her a tissue from the box on the coffee table. Maybe I should start, I said, reaching for the letter I'd written earlier. I wrote this for you before Bradley arrived. I think you should read it. Catherine took the letter with trembling hands and began to read. Her tears fell faster as she absorbed my words, my acknowledgement of how my overprotectiveness after her father's death had sometimes been suffocating, how my fear of losing her had manifested as control, how I had sometimes made her feel that she couldn't be herself. Mum, she said. When she finished reading, you didn't deserve what I did to you. Nothing justifies that. No, I agreed gently. I didn't deserve that public humiliation, but I understand better now how we got to this breaking point. Catherine took a deep breath. After I met Bradley's family, especially his mother Linda, something changed in me. She made me feel like I wasn't good enough. Subtle comments about my clothes, my education, my mannerisms. But she also offered a path to acceptance if I was willing to refine myself. And that meant distancing yourself from me, I said, understanding dawning. Catherine nodded miserably. Linda suggested that your presence at the wedding would make my humble origins too obvious. She said if I really loved Bradley and wanted to be accepted in their social circle, I needed to make a clean break from my past. And the photograph? I asked, still struggling to understand that particular cruelty. Catherine's face crumpled. It was Linda's idea. She said it would be a amusing touch that would make it clear to any of your supporters that you weren't welcome. I was so caught up in trying to please her, so desperate for her approvals,